The King Edward College team won 25% of its first games and went on to win all of its remaining games. 25% of the first games and went on to win all of the remaining games. What was the ratio of games won to the game lost if there were no ties? Now, to answer this, we just need to know that how many were the first games and how many were the remaining games, so that we can calculate that what was the total win to lose percentage ratio. Now, the first statement says that team had won 25% of all its game. It would have lost 30 more games than it actually did. Which means if the team had won 25% of all the games, that means out of the remaining games, if they had won only 25%, that means if they had lost the remaining 75% of the next game. So let's call them the first games and the remaining games. So of the remaining games, if they had lost 75%, then they would have lost 30 more games, which means 75% of the remaining games after the first games should be equal to 30, which means 3/4 of the remaining games is equal to 30, so the remaining games comes 40. We have got the remaining games, but we did not get the count of the first games, and therefore we cannot find out the answer to the question, and here we say that the first statement alone is not sufficient. Since the first statement alone is not sufficient, so we can eliminate option A and option D at this stage. Second statement says that the team won 75% of all its games. Now, understand, in the first round, they won 25% games. Of the remaining games, they won 100%. And finally, they won 75%. So the ratio of the first and the remaining games will be, this is the alligation method, we take the diagonal differences, that means 100 minus 75 becomes 25, and 25 and 75 difference becomes 50, which means the first games and the remaining games were definitely in the ratio 1:2. We can calculate the same thing using an equation as well. For example, 25% of the first games plus 100% of the remaining games is equal to 75% of the first games plus remaining games, and we'll get the same thing. First games over the remaining games will be 1:2. Now, the question is, what was the ratio of the games won to the games lost by the team? That means if initially they won 100 games, they played 100 games, then the remaining games will be 200. They win 200 here and they win 25 here. That means the total won games out of 300 will be 225 over 300. And now 225 over 300 you can calculate by dividing by 25. 25 divides it 9 times and 12 times, so that is 3:4, because we have the exact ratio of the total games won to won plus lost, total games. What was the ratio of games won to the games lost? So won over lost will be 3/1. That means this statement alone is sufficient, and since the second statement is sufficient but first is not, therefore the answer to the question becomes option B. Thank you so much.